Ramon Abbas, also known as Hushpuppi, Hush or Ray Hushpuppi, was born October 11, 1982 in Nigeria and is a convicted offender. In the United States, he was sentenced up to 11 years in prison for setting up to launder money he got from business email, compromise frauds, and other scams. These included schemes that defrauded a U.S. law firm of approximately $40 million, illegally transferred $14.7 million from a foreign financial group, and planned to steal $124 million from an English Premier League club. Hushpuppi has always been a person who lived his life extravagantly. On October 11, 2019, he was residing in a penthouse suite at the Palazzo Versace, Dubai, complete with a private pool and hot tub on his lawn. On Instagram, where he had over 2 million followers, a typical @Hushpuppi picture showed him smiling in front of one of his Ferraris or Rolls-Royce, leaning back in a seat in a private plane, or entering a designer boutique with a passel of rope-handled bags, usually Hermes, Fendi, or Louis Vuitton. His style was always absolutely perfect. He never wore the same clothing twice, and he wore Gucci most of the time. And there rose the title, the billionaire Gucci master. Even in 2019, there were doubts about how much money Abbas truly had and how he got it. His Instagram presence has transformed him into a superstar among the biggest stars in pop culture in Nigeria, where he was born. He'd share social media with pop stars Davido and Wizkid, and soccer players from English clubs Chelsea and Manchester City. However, speculations about Abbas' riches persisted. He was a Nigerian big boy, shorthand for an internet fraudster, or Yahoo boy, who struck it gold and flaunted it in the thriving ecosystem of Nigerian gossip blogs. Abbas rejected the chatter as the envy of so many enemies, all of whom were dissatisfied with their own lives and wanted to bring down a self-made guy who had left them all behind. Whatever the reality was, on his 37th birthday, before heading out to a celebration in his honor in the VIP room at the Dubai Blueberry Shop, Abbas took a moment to thank his supporters for their support on his journey from hustling child to a worldwide influencer. "As I enter my 30s today, I want to celebrate everyone out there," he posted on Instagram. The caption was posted alongside a photo of Abbas wearing a fancy blue tracksuit and standing in front of a massive sculpture of a Rolls-Royce hood ornament. Those of whom I have largely never seen, spoken to, or anything but who have been a great supporter of mine through every crisis up to this point are still riding for me. I want you to know that I rejoice and thank you today. Today is our day. Several celebrity websites published his thanks in full. The next day, Tammy Abraham, who was an English striker who had recently made his Chelsea debut, shared a photo of Hushpuppi with the message, "Happy birthday to my big bro for yesterday," along with a number of emojis. At the same time, Abbas provided a guided tour of his home to Daddy Freeze, a prominent Nigerian radio personality. With Freeze recording, they strolled through the penthouse while Abbas displayed his clothing and footwear collections and then went downstairs to see the Rolls and Ferraris. "I have 4 jacuzzis in this property, and a sauna, and my own pool," Abbas said to the viewers at home. He said that the apartment cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. The couple sat down for supper and chatted about internet trolls, religion, and family. When Abbas said that he frequently made charity gifts that never appeared on his stream, money was only mentioned. "I have a pure heart. I do a lot of good that not even a lot of social media needs to know about," he explained. "I get a decent night's sleep. When nice things happen to me, I know it's because I have done something good, not because someone promised me money I didn't earn or money I didn't deserve." But what does it mean to be deserving of wealth like Hushpuppi's? What kind of labor corresponds to the wealth of private planes and $5,000 handbags? The billionaire Gucci master had his answers to these inquiries, but so did the FBI. The answer would form the basis of the criminal case filed against him in a California federal court, United States of America versus Ramon Alronwe Abbas. According to the U.S. government, Abbas had another reason to celebrate just 3 days after his supper with Daddy Freeze. According to his and his accused co-federal conspirators' charges, on October 15, 2019, a Chase bank account Abbas controlled in the United States received a wire transfer for $922,857.76. New York law company sent the money as a payment owing to one of its customers, who had refinanced a piece of real estate at the Citizens Bank. When a paralegal at the company, KC, emailed to check where the wire should be transferred, she received a fax instructing her to direct the payment to Chase instead. Casey contacted the phone number listed on the fax to confirm the fax and started the transfer after everything appeared to be in order. In reality, nothing made sense. According to court papers, the fax and phone conversation was sent by someone in Abass orbit, possibly Abass himself, who had put himself in the middle of the transaction. The gambit was part of a business email compromise, or BEC campaign, a profitable, diverse, and elusive fraud that the U.S. believes Abass and his co-conspirators have carried out throughout the world. BEC scams are becoming more widespread and extremely difficult to detect. More than a third of the funds were moved from the Chase account to an account at the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. The remainder were transferred to separate bank accounts. On October 17th, Abass reportedly transmitted a photograph of the $396,000 payment to Golub Alamary, a Canadian-American from Toronto who police claim was his collaborator in past BEC-like schemes. According to the government, Alamary, Abass, and a loose online confederation of other figures, including North Korean state-sponsored hackers, at times targeted hundreds of millions of dollars in cash from businesses and banks, including more than $100 million from a single Premier League soccer club. Alamary contacted a third party to confirm that the funds had landed in Canada. He messaged Abass again when the move was finalized. One was guaranteed by Alamary. He said that he was aboard a plane that had just landed and that he would send a photograph as soon as he had strong enough connection, but no confirmation arrived. The FBI approached Alamary at the airport and arrested him moments later. Successful BEC scams, like the ones Alamary and Abass are accused of, always appear to be a magic trick. Phil in accounting, or in the instance of Abass, KC, the paralegal, receives an invoice, logs into a payment system, and sends out what appears to be a typical payment. The money then seemed to have vanished on its way to its intended recipient. KC's customers didn't detect the money was gone until later in October. BEC assaults first appeared around a half-decade ago, growing year after year until they eclipsed all other types of internet fraud. According to the FBI, about 20,000 such scams were perpetrated against American firms in 2020 alone, resulting in $1.8 billion in damages. While the multiplicity of BEC crimes makes totals difficult to determine, Crane Hazold, Senior Director of Threat Research at Agari Data & Company, and a former FBI analyst, defines a BEC as a response-based impersonation assault that's asking something of value, basically impersonating a real firm to mislead consumers into handing away their money. A BEC fraud, regardless of its flavor, typically begins with someone breaking into a company email account, sometimes employing social engineering techniques such as phishing. Once inside, the criminals do not steal anything. Instead, they begin silently sending copies of incoming and outgoing emails to themselves. They then have to wait. They observe it for a few weeks or months, searching for specific payment data, determining who their clients are, and looking at communication trends, Hazold explains. They apply that intelligence to inject themselves into a real payment that is supposed to be due when they notice an invoice coming in or out. The fraud then can proceed in two ways. If the fraudsters have compromised the intended recipient's email address, they simply produce an invoice identical to the actual one submitted, their own bank account credentials, and resend it from the recipient's email address, frequently apologizing for the mix-up. If they've hacked the sender, they could send a follow-up invoice from a spoofed email that looks to match the payees at first sight, or even establish a complete firm and website that is one letter off from the genuine one. In any situation, Phil in accounting receives an email that, without further examination, seems like the ones he receives daily. It may appear ludicrous to the rest of us that the company employee could send millions of dollars to the wrong bank account. These attacks are so realistic looking that most people don't think twice about it, Hazold said. Because when you're involved in these kind of payments, you get a lot of these emails every day. And if it doesn't raise any red lights, you won't move up the chain for confirmation. One would think that when money exchanges hands in greater and larger sums, there would be some mechanism that requires supplementary authorization, or anything along those lines. However, in many circumstances, this isn't the case. Meanwhile, among the fraudsters, there is a loosely networked hierarchy of participants, the majority of whom received a modest percentage of the overall cash. There are individuals who are skilled at getting into email accounts in the first place. Let's call them hackers, though they may not really use technical hacking to gain access. There are many money rules who are usually locals who have been duped into opening bank accounts via romance scams and other ruses. Above them are loaders, as Hazold refers to them, and money launderers, as the law refers to them. persons who handle foreign accounts that may take millions of dollars in transfers and then redirect the money across the world to be retrieved by heist organizers. For a crime that generates more damages than any other type of online fraud, 40% of cybercrime in the United States, according to the FBI, BECs maintain an unusual low profile. Only the most serious examples make it into tech and security press. This is due in part to the fact that BECs are embarrassing for corporate victims. Despite the money at stake, the crime might appear technical and mundane in comparison to the high-stakes drama of holding a hospital or gas pipeline cyber hostage for ransom. I think most people think of BEC assaults as simple, uninteresting attacks, and most people don't realize how serious the situation is. Hassel adds, when you compare the amount of money lost to ransomware to what is lost in BEC assaults, it's a drop in the bucket. BECs have become a global phenomenon, with networked cyber gangs spouting up everywhere, from the United States to Russia to Brazil. While the scam's roots are unknown, the cybersecurity sector believes it started in Nigeria, since numerous criminals have been identified there. Criminal and fraudsters in West Africa have been doing a lot of the same things that go into the BEC assaults for decades, Hasselt explains. Those are all targeted social engineering attacks. And basically, in 2015, hackers realized they could make more money targeting companies than they did targeting people. Abbas used to post frequently about growing up in Orwanchoki, or Orworo as locals call it, on the western shore of Lagos Lagoon. His Muslim father worked as a cab driver, and his Christian mother sold bread. Hushpuppi told Daddy Freeze over dinner in 2019 that he'd gravitated towards Islam, but his parents never forced him to choose between faiths. He had a cross tattooed on one bicep and a Quranic text on the other. It's reasonable for reports to wonder if a guy like Abbas has a key in his history that will open the answers to his alleged criminal objectives. However, there is a risk in associating background with destiny. Adedlaji Oshalaja, a criminologist at Lagos State University who researches cybercrime, spent several years in the mid-2000s living among a group of Yahoo boys who made their livelihood operating scams and near Abbas neighborhood. Some of the neighborhood's usually typical younger males began to wander into online scamming in the early 2000s, when cyber cafes first opened around Lagos, according to Oshalaja. A stigma had followed them onto the internet, spawned by the Nigerian prince frauds of the 1990s, which offered a piece of fictitious prince's stolen treasure provided the victim would transfer some money ahead to assist in retrieving it. With unemployment on the rise, some of these young men finally opted to embrace a form of fraud known simply as Yahoo, owing to an early dependence on the company's free email accounts. Social media provided an almost infinite number of targets, frequently referred to as MAGAs, local slang that loosely translates as gullible makings, and predates the Trump-era phase. As a result, there was an outstanding amount of illegal imagination. Over a decade, scams progressed from money order fraud to check cashing scams to romance scams to BECs, fueled by an abundance of untapped ability and an inefficient, continuously corporate government. Cybercrime is a metaphor for more profound and pervasive problem in Nigeria. When faced with survival issues, individuals improvise, and if there's no structure in place to confront their inventions decisively, it becomes a standard, according to his own assessment. Abbas felt particularly abandoned by the system. In 2018, when a renowned Nigerian political activist proposed that the government look into his source of money, he answered with a passionate Snapchat video reply, "My mother is from the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, which is where Nigeria's oil originates from," he explained. "She has never profited in any way. She is also beyond 60 years old." He highlighted that he was the first in his father's family going back generations to escape poverty, but he had not been unaffected by it. His sister died of typhoid, he claimed, since the family couldn't afford a medical bill. It's impossible to pinpoint when and where Abbas allegedly began his purported web business. Uyanuga provided me the phone number of a man named Noah, whom he said had known Abbas as a child. After weeks of trying, I finally found Noah, who hesitated on the topic of how close they'd been, pointing out that he was much older than Abbas. But while we were on the phone, he flagged over another guy, apparently off the street, who identified himself just as Jay. Jay recalled Abbas as a kind youngster who was never in trouble. but he'd always had a taste for the finer things in life. We used to nickname him Ramoni, he said. He was quite the fashionista. The tale relates to Abbas's own childhood memories. He previously detailed combing local stores for the lowest designer brands he could find, then reselling them throughout the neighborhood during a live Instagram conversation with another influencer. Around 2014, his aspirations drew him from Lagos to Kuala Lumpur as part of what Uyanyuga characterized as an exodus of young Yahoo boys from Nigeria to Malaysia, the United States, the United Kingdom, and India. Uyanyuga believes Abbas handled his money better than many of his countrymen and departed for a location from where it was easier to operate online. He went to study, he informed me, recounts Pak Sakuru Edekoa, Abbas's boyhood buddy. We lost communication after he departed for Malaysia. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, cybercrime has increasingly become an excuse for police brutality. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, which is in charge of investigating digital fraud and money laundering, often apprehends low-level local swindlers and posts their mug images on social media. However, when internet frauds proliferated in the 2000s, the heavily armed Special Anti-Robbery Squad, or SARS, which was a law enforcement agency established in the 1990s to confront a surge of robberies and kidnapping, somehow claimed cybercrime as their domain. The team became known for its blatant extortion and torture of detainees, with bogus fraud claims occasionally acting as justification for both. Once in Kuala Lumpur, Abbas used the Instagram account @Hushpuppi, which he had claimed in 2012 but had never used. Many of his early photographs were made in a small apartment kitchen, but he had a natural presence in front of the camera. The images usually framed him from head to toe, with his left leg slightly ahead of the right to highlight his whole suit, including his shoes. His smile, generally with his mouth closed and his eyes wide open, was confident, ambitious, and a touch mischievous. He soon had hundreds of likes on every post, and his captions began to represent his own kind of prosperity gospel. He offered advice on living your best life as well as mini lectures about how far he'd already come and how others could do the same. Now, later on, this guy came to Dubai. Hushpuppi, for his part, looked to be moving beyond flamboyant purchasing power and into the stratosphere of super-rich consumerism. Brands were taking notice. Stores inundated Hushpuppi and his pals with gifts, including magnificent birthday cakes, personalized shoes, and engraved Rolls-Royce nameplates. Hushpuppi claimed he was denied a French visa once when attempting to flee Nigeria. He was now writing about his stay at the Ritz, Paris for Fashion Week as in all expenses paid by Louis Vuitton. According to the U.S. authorities, Abbas got a communication from Allmary, a Canadian online money mover, in January 2019. Allmary, also known online as G. Backwood and Big Boss, was a mustachioed 35-year-old from Ontario. He'd been assisting in the cashing out of BEC frauds for years, including defrauding a Canadian institution of $10 million in 2017. Abbas was labeled as Hush on Allmary's phone, and the two chatted on Snapchat, where he went by the handle Hushpuppi5. Allmary informed Abbas that he needed 2 bank accounts in Europe, each capable of receiving $6.1 million without drawing notice. The funds were delivered on February 12th. Abbas responded by providing information for a Romanian bank account that he said could handle huge quantities. The payments would be made by the Bank of Valletta Pic in Malta, which is a commercial and financial bank with locations throughout Europe. It had been hacked months ago in an unusual and audacious BEC-style scheme. Anyway, all of Hush's luxuries and plans went on until his arrest by the Dubai police in June 2020 and a subsequent extradition. Abbas was detained alongside 11 others in 6 simultaneous searches on the night his residence at the Palazzo Versace was stormed in Operation codenamed Fox Hunt 2. Detectives recovered more than 150 million dirhams in cash, 13 luxury automobiles for $25 million, 21 computers, 47 cell phones, 15 memory storage devices, 5 external hard drives, and 800,000 emails from prospective victims, in addition to bags full of cash. The arrest was made as part of an FBI investigation into him as a key actor in a worldwide cybercrime network that provided safe havens for stolen money all across the world. Anyway, that's the story of Hushpuppi. What do you guys think about him now? Did he get what he deserved? If then, do comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway, we shall meet in another episode. Until then, bye.